Stephen, how are you?
I'm just groovy. How are you doing?
I'm here.
Seemed like I had a question I wanted to ask you if I could before the gates open.
Yeah.
Oh, it's directly regarding the first item on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
The garage on that house. I don't think it's original. There's nothing in there, but it looks too new.
Sorry, there's nothing here that does what?
There's nothing that addresses that. Whether or not it was original, it doesn't refer to it.
Oh, it should be towards the very end of the packet. So maybe I'm wrong. Danny was supposed to put, you know what? I don't think he put in the sheets. I think he rushed on this one. I don't think he put in the sheets that he was supposed to put in from this particular historic district. Let me see if I can pull that up right now while we're waiting for everyone. David, I'm looking for it. He should have put that in the packet. Sorry.
Not a problem.
I'm glad you asked so I could look for it.
I'm here to serve as a reminder. If nothing else.
Always helpful.
Hello, Anne.
Hi,
How's stuff?
it's going. Got my second vaccine dose last weekend.
So did I.
Me too.
Awesome.
Reactions from anyone?
My 16-year-old got her first one yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
I just felt like kind of tired and my arm was sore, but that was about it.
I spent the better part of 3 days in bed.
Oh, no.
I had like a 101 temperature and uncontrolled shaking. And
Oh.
What did each of you, which one did each of you get?
I had Moderna.
You had Moderna.
I got Pfizer.
I had Moderna.
Okay. And I had Moderna. My husband had Johnson & Johnson, and Olivia is getting Pfizer. So I don't know. I was 24 hours later not feeling good. Jim had like about 12 hours later chills and stuff overnight, but then was fine the next day.
I was achy for a day.
Yeah.
Just muscle aches.
They're not too bad.
Yeah, my chills didn't stop for 3 days.
I should introduce myself. I am new to this committee, but my name's Jane.
Hello, Jane.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome. We're excited to have you.
I've been on this committee a week now with no meetings, so there was a lot to read, and I can't say I'm up to speed, but I'll do my best.
No worries.
I forget everything between meetings anyway.
Oh, good, Stephen. That makes me feel better.
I am here.
So one of the reasons why there were so many attachments is everyone kind of forgets. So I try to send it back again a couple weeks before the meeting starts.
I've created a 3-ring binder, so we'll see if I can keep up.
And if we were in person, I would have given you a 3-ring binder. So we'll still work on that. I need to get new binders for each of the new members, but it just haven't. Each month we've had a new member. We had a large group that all had to leave around the same time. And so you're number 3 in a row, and we have one more hopefully next month.
I saw there's still one vacancy.
They had 2 people who interviewed with the council that HPC was their second choice, So I think they were waiting to figure out who they were going to appoint to the position that they all applied for, and then decide from there who could go possibly to the last opening that we have.
Mm-hmm. Good.
I'm always happy to be part of someone's second choice.
But
If I
sometimes
had to,
all the choices are so wonderful that you can't choose.
Yeah.
if I had to guess, it's probably the Arts Council. That's the one. It wasn't? Okay.
No, I want to say it's Parks and Rec.
Close, something fun. Yeah.
Parks and Rec is really popular.
Yeah.
That and Green Space
Hmm.
and Arts Commission.
Yeah.
No one wants to be on any of my other stuff. Board of Adjustment, Plan Commission, Architectural Review Board.
Well, at least we were their second choice. That's good.
So we're waiting for Katie, our lovely chairperson. And then let me see, Katie and Doug. Brendan's not going to make it this evening. We've got Stephen, we've got Michael, we've got Daisha, we've got Jane. So really all we're waiting for is our chairperson. And I know she sometimes has bedtime routine to get down.
Is Karen joining us?
I did not, she didn't, last month she had a conflict, but I hadn't seen anything saying she wasn't. But I didn't see anything, I haven't seen her on yet, obviously.
Okay.
And if for some reason, we have a problem where Katie does not show up. And didn't we vote in a vice chair? Aren't you?
It's Ann.
So Anne, just to be
Yeah.
safe, I just forwarded Katie the script
Okay.
for the public hearing. I'm going to go ahead right now. God, I love doing Zoom from my desk instead of the council chambers. I can do so much more. Let's see. Oh, there's Karen. Karen, you undid your hair. I never got to comment on how nice your hair's looked these last couple months, when you had it all braided. Oh, we can barely hear you, but we know you're there. And I just forwarded you the script for the public hearing.
Okay.
God, I need my microphone.
Oh, there you go. We can hear you.
Okay.
What do we say? We wait like 2 more minutes for Katie. If for some reason we don't have her, Anne, I'll go ahead and have you start. And we don't have the applicant for the public hearing, which is a little unusual. I mean, we can still hold it without them, but if you have questions, you won't be able to ask anyone. And then the other 2 are just demolition requests and not a hearing. And so we will not need anyone for those. If everyone wants to introduce themselves, we could probably go ahead and do that while we're waiting. We have a new member. It's another month, another new member.
I'm going to start because, at least on my screen, I'm top and center, which makes me special. For those of you who haven't met me, hi, I'm Steve Stovall. I'm an architect. I've been on the commission for a year and a half. That's it. That's all there is you can say about me.
Doug, you want to go next?
Sure. Doug Stanley. I've been on the board for quite a while. and thrilled to see a lot of energetic and new members, and as passionate about this this area of our city. And I'm pleased that you're there, that you've made this commitment and didn't hold out for the Arts Commission or Green Park, the parks.
And do you want to go next?
Sure, I'm Ann Hallvox. I've been on the committee maybe 2 years. I forget every time how long it's been, but I've lived in Webster for almost 11 years now, and I have over a century house, so I'm very passionate about that. That's what drew me to this group, and I don't know, I feel like we've had a lot of really good discussions, so hopefully we can keep going with those, but welcome.
Michael?
I had to unmute myself. I'm Michael. I also live in a century home. This kind of stuff is I don't know. I really enjoy it. I like the history of all of these old homes. I love watching all of the shows that make me think I can buy and flip every single century plus home, even though I know I probably can't. So yeah.
And then Daisha. Oh, we can't hear you. I know you unmuted. Daisha's new while she continues to look at why she can't be heard. But we can still have her vote, but then we'll have to figure out how to answer questions, because I am seeing that she is unmuted, but something's not working with her sound. And then Jane, if you want to introduce yourself to everyone.
Sure. I'm Jane Porchy, and for the record, this is the only committee I applied for. So I've stepped down and left the Historical Society after being chair of it for a number of years. I've lived in Webster 50 years, and my first house was built in 1906. Then we built a brand new house, and now I'm in a 1952 house in South Webster. So I've run the gamut of house ages, and feel like I know the community pretty well.
And then Karen Alexander is our council liaison who's with us this evening. And then it looks like our applicant for the public hearing is now on as an attendee. So what we'll probably do is go ahead and get started. Anne, if you could run the meeting, let me do this. I'm going to switch our screen over to the PowerPoint because I think that's been helping us the last few months. So I'm going to switch that over and go to beginning. So this is tonight's meeting. Here's the agenda for tonight's meeting. So if we want to start with, and Anne, I know you haven't had to do this. So if you want to start with asking for a motion on the minutes, we don't have to do an individual voice vote, and then anyone who was not in attendance last month should not vote on them.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I just, excuse me, ask if we have an approval of just review last month's minutes. And then if somebody has a motion to approve.
I approve the minutes. I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, and all those who were present last month that approve, say aye.
Aye.
And then make sure to ask for any opposed.
Any opposed?
All right, so next thing, we don't have any visitor comments. We do have the applicant on for the public hearing. So actually we'll go to the public hearing next. Were you able to get the email that I sent?
Yes, I have it right here.
Okay, so I will get you to the next slide.
Okay, so the purpose of the public hearing this evening is to determine if the primary structure and property
And I apologize. This is actually accessory structure.
It's an accessory structure, okay, located at 221 South Maple Avenue. Should be issued a certificate of appropriateness to demolish, and is it a garage?
It's a garage.
Okay. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this proposed demolition?
So I'm going to allow the applicant to talk. So Dan, we have you able to talk if you want to unmute yourself in regards to your application.
Unmute. Okay, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so this is a project that I was going to do in the past. I did an addition on the rear of my home. And for just a myriad of reasons, frankly, I'm a contractor. And so my wife and my family have had to deal with me being a contractor, frankly, and doing things on my own home. And it got to the point with that last addition to where I wanted to continue to sleep in my own bed. So I stopped and I didn't do the garage portion at that time. And but it's really been something that doesn't really fit. I have to sort of turn sideways to get around in my garage if there's a vehicle in there. This garage is entered from an alley, right? So over here on South Maple, we have an alley that services our garages, so it's not really street visible. But you know, I just want to be able to put my car and my motorcycle and my other car in there and still be able to get around it, because I am a contractor and I'm kind of a handyman, I guess. I have a lot of tools and things that you know, I use at home, and I'd like to be able to kind of access those. The garage is in pretty rough shape. It's a full masonry structure. It's built with those clay tiles, the inner walls, and veneered with brick. And the floor has, as you can see in the one photo, the concrete floor is split. It was that way when I moved in. It's been about 10 years, and I've always wanted to replace that, and it just didn't seem to be any point, frankly, until I did kind of the whole thing. So it just doesn't really fit with, you know, it's too small. The garage is just way too small.
So for the members, just a quick thing that Stephen had pointed out to me. Your packets did not include the sheet from the National Register nomination for the Historic District. The reason why this is a hearing for a certificate of appropriateness is due to the fact that this property is located within the Central Webster Historic District. However, the house and the garage are non-contributing structures. The house was built in 1940. So the sheet in the overall nomination does not consider the house itself to be contributing. And it actually does not even mention the garage.
Interesting.
So Anne, sorry, you're muted.
I have that because I have 3 dogs laying around me, so I apologize if there's any barking that goes off. But Dan, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Well, other than I mean, I am a contractor, and the stuff that we build is very high end. And I have a acute awareness of, the aesthetic. And so I think that the new structure will be a big asset to the neighborhood, frankly.
Thank you. And to the members of the commission, is there anyone who wishes to ask any questions?
This isn't strictly within our purview, but I'm always curious, what are your plans? We don't see drawings, and you're not supposed to approve drawings. But I'm curious, are you planning to put in a 2 or 3 car garage in that place?
Yeah, I am planning to put a 2-car garage in it with a small amount of living space above, with that functions inside the parameters of the, of what we're allowed.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition of this proposed demolition?
We have no one else on the Zoom call.
Okay, so I guess at this point, we'll close the public hearing. Do you have to do a motion or anything like that with this?
So no, what we'll do is we're going to go to close the hearing. This is just the point where you all can discuss the application. Just as a reminder, I always put on, normally in your packets, I put the various determining factors that are in the code in determining whether to grant the certificate of appropriateness. And so normally we kind of walk through each of these with any questions. There's 2 slides of those. So I'll show you. We can go through those 2 slides. And then at the key point, when we do decide to completely close the hearing before the vote, we do need to enter the evidence into, and usually, again, we can do it in the way that it is on the slide and can be documented on the slide, so you don't have to read through all of them.
Did you want me to read? Do I need to read any of these out loud, or?
I think you just need to ask the members if there are any concerns with any of these items.
Okay.
And we can start with the items on the first page and then go to the second page.
Okay. So in determining whether or not to grant a certificate of appropriateness, we'll consider any of the following factors. Do we have any concerns whether the subject property can be put to any reasonably beneficial or economic use without relocating or demolishing any part of the subject property?
If I owned that garage and I drove a Mini Cooper, I would have absolutely no problem putting 2 or 3 of them in there. If, however, I owned a contractor's truck with a lift kit, I might have difficulties using that garage. I'm willing to bet Dan owned that truck when he bought the house.
And I guess also whether the owner will incur a substantial decrease in the fair market value of the property as a result of the denial of a certificate of appropriateness. Which, I mean, I don't see anything there. Whether the owner will incur a substantial decrease in the pre-tax or after-tax return to owners of record or other investors in the property as a result of the denial of a certificate of appropriateness. And the cost of the proposed relocation or demolition, and an estimate of any additional cost that would be incurred to comply with the recommendations of the commission for changes necessary for the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness. And the structural soundness of any structures on the property and their suitability for rehabilitation. Also, the economic feasibility of rehabilitation or reuse of the existing structure or improvement on the property in the case of a proposed demolition or relocation. The owner applicant's purchase of the subject property after the enactment of the relevant provisions of Chapter 52 without making the purchase contingent upon the owner applicant first obtaining necessary board and/or commission approvals under Chapter 52 shall be deemed to be conclusive evidence that the applicant is responsible for his or her own economic hardship, if any. And evidence of deterioration due to willful neglect of routine maintenance and/or commencement of demolition by intentional or reckless disregard of the city's requirement for a certificate of appropriateness shall create a presumption against the owner and/or applicant that must be overcome by clear and convincing evidence before a certificate of appropriateness may be issued.
So if any of the members have any concerns with any of those, that's pretty much where you would go. Obviously, this is a very different situation than if this was a contributing structure to the historic district. So that's where it becomes a little hard to pull this all apart when it's not a contributing structure.
Do any members have any concerns?
I guess I just have a question. When something like this is agreed to, and Dan obviously has a plan for a replacement, I'm under the assumption, and this is my ignorance being in my first meeting, that his plans for that replacement have to be approved by a separate committee for the appropriateness of that. Is that the way it works?
That is correct. So he has turned in plans that need to go to the Architecture Review Board.
Uh-huh.
Architecture Review Board, when they are reviewing it, because it's in a historic district, it will actually have a hearing at the beginning of the ARB meeting and have to go through that process prior to approval of the design. And in the case, when we know that we have, since you all meet only once a month, we do allow people to turn things in for the Architecture Review Board with the presumption that you will review it. And then depending on the outcome, we can either remove it off of the upcoming agenda, which would be this Thursday, or we can leave it on the agenda depending on the outcome of this meeting. So we try to keep people from having to go through too much timing, but we try to make it important that they go through the process properly. So in his case, he's on the agenda for Thursday night before the Architecture Review Board, and a hearing will be opened, and there is a sign on the property to let the neighbors know in case they want to be aware of it, and it is reviewed against the historic district guidelines.
Super. Thank you for the explanation.
Yes. And if there's nothing else and no one has any concerns, we can identify and state that all of the evidence that's shown on the slide right now, which will be in the packet, is the evidence for the determination. And then you can take a vote, ask for a motion, ask for a second, and then take a vote. And then we would want to do it as a voice vote so that
Okay.
we can identify all the members.
Do I need to read any of this
Nope.
out loud? Okay.
Normally, if you were sitting there with your packet in front of you, we would have you read it aloud. But since we've been doing it via Zoom, we're recognizing that this is all on here.
So I guess I will put it to a vote. I guess anyone who wants to make a motion of approval.
I move that we approve to demolish this accessory structure.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then if we can just go ahead and I'm going to read the names off, and then if each of you could just state your vote. And if Dacia's still having problems with sound, we can have her wave. So Anne,
Aye.
Doug,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Dacia,
Aye.
yay,
Mhm.
Jane.
Aye.
Okay, so that has been approved. Dan, you've been approved and can continue on to ARB on Thursday.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Anne, the next one that's on the agenda. So as a reminder to the new members, or as an education to the new members, we did in the last year or so make some changes to the code. It used to be that only structures over 100 years old had to go through a process to come before historic preservation to ask to be demolished if they were not in a historic district. We made the changes to the code so that it would add an extra step to the process in case there was something that was of a particular nature that we would be concerned and want to possibly start the process of nominating it, that it would give us that opportunity. So we did make that change to the code and the last year or so, and it's been kind of unusual just because of being on Zoom, but we put it in a process where staff reviews it, creates a staff report with all the documentation that the applicants provide. We do require them to do an occupancy inspection, so we get in to actually see it against what they've provided to verify that it is true and accurate information. And then we provide a staff recommendation. So at this point, it's simply whether you agree with staff's recommendation after reviewing it, or whether you would prefer to hold it for further review or have any other concerns. In most cases, we would just kind of quickly identify what staff has found in the application in their review. And then it is not a public hearing. And then we just simply ask for a standard vote. So the first one that you have on is 156 Cottage. The structure was built in 1921. We found no records pertaining to any particular historic inventory sheet or anything related to the structure that we found related to the architect or any other information. It had not been previously identified on any of our lists as an at-risk property, but again, we're still having the whole conversation about at-risk. It is a 1.5 story frame bungalow at approximately 1,177 square feet in gross floor area. There were photographs in your packet about some issues with water damage and mold in the house. The limit of height in the upper level of the structure. So the request was to demolish the structure. And staff did not find any particular reasons and would recommend approval of the request. And we can answer any questions. And then Anne, if no one has any questions, you can just ask for a vote.
Does anybody have any questions about the evidence that was provided to us regarding demolition?
Were people living in it prior to being bought last month? Is there any way to know that?
So the applicant is on, I feel like if I remember correctly, she has been living it. Hold on. You are able to ask the applicants even though it's not a hearing. Jim, would you be able to answer that question?
Yes, there was people living in it up to about 6 months ago. There was a young woman living in it.
I just have a question. It kind of looks like it's a little hard to see, but given that this is kind of a craftsman style, I can't tell if there's stained glass windows on each side of the chimney. But is there any plan to repurpose or salvage any moldings or details that, you know, might be worth saving?
Yes, it's an interesting situation that has presented itself. My daughter has actually bought the house next door. We're going to be doing some remodeling to it. And as a result, there are some half dozen or more windows we're considering salvaging and using. We're anything of value on the house, yeah, we're gonna pull, but there's not a lot of value. It's hard to even believe somebody was living there, quite frankly. Because the second floor, you know, has like a 6.5 foot high ceiling for starters. And I don't know if those are stained windows on each side of that fireplace or not. If they are, we'll certainly pull them out and try to do something with them. The house itself just never got the upkeep, and as a result of that has fallen in disrepair.
Basically, essentially, the house. So you live next door to the house. The house is essentially purchased to tear down.
I had purchased this one, and my daughter recently purchased the one next door. So we're all new to the street.
Are there any other questions for the applicant?
I don't have any for the applicant, but I just have a comment that it doesn't appear to me from the submission that there's any historic significance to the home that would warrant our concerns from a preservation standpoint.
So this was built in 1921, is that correct?
According to county's records. Now, county's records aren't always accurate, but around that time.
Okay. And was it original, did it originally have the bump out in the back, do we know, or was that, that was an addition, I guess?
We can't always tell. County doesn't have very accurate records. If they do have something that lets us know that it was an addition, usually it's more recent. So sometimes we'll have something that says house was built in 1921 and county knows that something happened in the 80s, but normally not much more than that.
Okay, thank you.
If the damage appears to be primarily because of neglect, do owners have recourse to say, you know, I just can't afford to fix it up? Are there ways that they can seek help to stop neglecting it? I guess is my question. It's a shame that something gets into a state that we can't save it due to neglect.
So there's a number of other things that we're trying to do in regards to that. The hard part is it's private property. So when it comes to certain things, when it comes to enforcing exterior, you know, there are certain steps that we can start taking. But when it comes to the interior, when someone has been living there for a long period of time, it's very difficult. So it's education, it's a lot of other things. And the hard part is when we look at these, we're trying to look at, you know, the current person who has purchased it, which is why we do the records to show, you know, if this person just purchased it, that they're not the ones that have been neglecting it. So looking through that portion of it, but it will be something we will be continuing to discuss even later on in this meeting.
Okay.
So if there's no other questions, do we discuss this or?
I mean, if there's no other questions, I mean, technically it wasn't a hearing, so there normally wouldn't have been questions, but I think the questions answered the conversation you would have had. But you can ask for a motion if someone wants to make a motion.
Okay, so I guess we'll put it to a motion to vote. If anybody has a motion for approval.
I move we approve the demolition request.
I will second that.
Okay, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there anyone present that are opposed? Okay.
Thank you. All right, Jim, you are approved.
Thank you.
So all next item is 17 North Iola, similar to the one that we just discussed in terms of it is a request for a demolition. The existing single-family dwelling was built in 1948. The city was not able to find any records pertaining to a historic property inventory sheet for the subject property. It hasn't been listed as an at-risk property in any of our documents that we could find. It's a one-story frame bungalow, approximately 1,288 square feet. In this case, it was purchased in March of 2018, and it is being requested to demolish for a new single-family structure. We did not, just so you know, it has been a rental property for a while, and we did not see anything that would recommend holding it for any period of time for historic reasons, and would recommend approving the request. And I don't have anyone on here to answer additional questions, but I might be able to answer additional questions if anyone has any.
Mara, just looking at the pictures that we were provided, a majority of them have the yellow siding. There is one picture of a house with like kind of grayish siding with a blue door.
I think that's an adjacent property.
Okay, I was just making sure. So I was like, that doesn't look like the same house to me. So
No, that's kind of odd. Had not even noticed that. I was just looking at the yellow house. Yeah, that is kind of odd. I wonder if they just accidentally put another structure.
I noticed in looking at that street that next door to it is a really large new structure, like from our list of new homes. So, and I think that might be the only really large house on that street. So,
I mean, we weren't given too many details, I feel like, about this house, especially the interior.
So can I ask a question? Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
And this probably is more specific to Mara. So these people, they're not my direct neighbors, right? But this is, I can throw a baseball and hit their house. We're supposed to look at this solely as a historic preservation if it rings true to the history, if it maintains history, nothing more, nothing less. That's it.
Correct.
That's where the line ends.
Yes.
Okay.
Which I know is very difficult because there are all kinds of other layers to the question of multiple questions that I know that the city council are struggling with, that the plan commission have been addressing, that, you know, we are seeing a large number of these smaller sized, more affordable structures that are being demolished, and in its place are houses that are going in that are double and more the size. But that is something that we're currently addressing with the council. There are a couple hearings open with the city council right now. We'd hope that with some of what we're doing, it'll help with saving some of these. And those are before hearings with the council. And then we're working on some other code amendments with the plan commission. So yes, but in this case, your purview is simply, is there a historic reason why we should save it? Because we have had some in the past that were just at, 98 years old, and were coming through and being demolished automatically because there was no process to review it. So this is giving us a little bit more of a take at it in order to try to address the loss of some of our smaller, older homes.
I know this is a larger builder who has had a presence in Webster. And I can't remember of any time that I've been on the commission if we've ever had a Century property or a property that we needed to approve to be demolished for Pentrax. And so I don't know, have they ever attended any of these for properties that they have taken down?
I don't believe they've had to because all of their structures, like in this case, this would have been a structure that prior to our current codes would not have been gone before you. And I believe almost all the ones that they have demolished were either of an age that wouldn't have had to have gone before you, or of an age that they were just under the wire in obtaining them prior to them hitting that century mark.
So I guess one thing is, usually my question that I like to ask all the time is if you're going to take this down, if there's anything that you can salvage. In the case with them, since they don't attend these meetings, and any builder or owner who doesn't attend, is there any way to suggest that to them?
We can definitely suggest it. Yeah, most definitely. You can put it in your motion for us to suggest it.
Again, it's kind of hard to tell with this property. They didn't provide any interior pictures, so.
Yeah. And in general, if you looked at the housing report, there really wasn't a huge amount of items. There were some outlets, some switches, an anti-tip device, carbon monoxide detector. There really wasn't much in general on the interior. So, you know, this had been occupied and probably could have some minor stuff done and could still be occupied.
So last I saw, there were still people living in it.
They might still be. I know that they have this one on the architectural review board for Thursday for a new house.
Okay. Okay.
Which of course they could be working on the timing. There are quite a few developers that are jumping, and you might see, I think, one or two more who are jumping through hoops immediately to try to get under the wire in case the city council approves the reduced house size for the smaller substandard lots. So we're looking at a floor area ratio where right now, if you have a really small lot, you can still build a good size, oversized house. And in the new code, the ratio stays a ratio of lot size to house size. So a few of them are trying to get in under the wire because under the current code, they can build up to 2,600 square feet for the new house. And under the new code, they maybe could only build 1,600 square feet. So we're seeing a rush of these last couple because they're anticipating it possibly being approved at council. It's been approved by the Plan Commission for recommendation to the council, and the council's hearing was opened last Tuesday, I want to say, whenever I had, not a week, anyway, it was at the last council meeting that I did a public hearing on those items.
Can I ask, how do we define historic, right? So like that last house we just voted on was 100 years old. A lot of the things that I read, now granted, I didn't have to do any of this work to my house that I live in now, but at one point, somebody dug out the entire exterior parameter of the house and interior parameter and put a proper French drain to fix the water issues, you know, put on a new roof. There was water damage in the house, but it had all been mitigated, and now we live in it quite freely. So I guess what is there a definition that we look at when we think about historic preservation, and if so, how do we?
So we haven't had time to really do some training with you all because we've had so many items on the agenda. So one of the things that we will be talking about is I wanted to wait till that last position got filled, which hopefully will be filled at the next council meeting, depending on the other applicants for a couple other commissions. Once we have everybody on, I'm planning to kind of do a stop and say, okay, let's stop for a moment with everything we're working on. Let's retrain. We've pretty much added 4 new members to a commission of 9. So taking a step back and trying to go back through what the other commission members spent months and months and months talking about, which was there is a definition as part of this process that talks about, you know, is it historic because of an architect who built it? Is it historic because of a particular architectural style? Is it historic because of some event that happened there? And in looking up any of those, a lot of those are documented, and we have a lot of information on things like that. So there is a definition, but what we really need to do is be able to walk you through, what does your historic preservation ordinance say? What is your role on the Historic Preservation Commission? You've got a few key things like holding hearings on certificates of appropriateness. You now have a few of these, which are these demolition requests that are supposed to be much more of a, we kind of talked about them not even going into the detail that you all are going into right now, but a lot of you are new. But it's supposed to be more of a, hey, we've reviewed it. staff has reviewed it against what you have in the code. We don't see any issues. And unless someone else knows about something that we're not aware of, which occasionally can happen because they're aware of a particular area of the city, but that these would just be kind of okay, you've gone through the process. There's nothing historic. Let's move them along. So from that standpoint, we were kind of working along those lines. Then there's this whole other section that we were trying to make our next project, which was looking at risk properties, helping to define what does that mean? Is it something that you want to put on a list to designate? And then one of the other jobs in the ordinance is that you have the ability to work on nominating new historic districts, work on nominating individual structures. So there's a lot that you can do, and it's hard. You want to grab onto everything at once, and you have limited time. And via Zoom, it's even harder than it is in person. So we're going to try to wrap our hands around a few of those things, and we are definitely going to do some additional training. But I didn't want to do training when one person got added, then try to do it again, and then try to do it again. I was hoping that we would get the fourth position filled and then kind of take a break, let's stop and let's do some training.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, are there any other questions regarding this property? Does anyone want to make a motion to approve demolition?
I will make
We
the
approve
motion that
that.
we approve it.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, Doug, I know that's your job.
I'm just moving us along, Steve. So,
Are there any opposed?
Thank you. So here's where we can have a conversation about how you all want to move forward. So we've got all of you on with the exception of Katie. Katie and Brendan. So two of our members who've been on for a while are not here this evening. We have a number of new members. We had a lot of information I forwarded on. There's a couple thoughts we can have about how you want to proceed. We could hold off on having this particular discussion in order for us to dedicate most of next month's meeting to a training, a refresher, here's where we maybe want to go. I know I hate kicking this can down the road, which I know we keep doing, but I know that it took us a long time when we were trying to do our demolition, changing that to anything over 50 years old coming before you. So I know that that took a number of months, and we were in person, which was even easier. This is so much more difficult, and it shouldn't be, but it is. So we could continue, we could hold off on this and prepare for next month to have a bigger discussion about training, hoping or anticipating that the council will appoint our last position and fill our last position. And then I know that Doug potentially has something else that he wants to further discuss. And so we might be able to tie those two together with some additional training and potentially some other things that help bring you all back to what is your purpose, where are you, and what should you be working on based on what you are assigned to do as part of the ordinance.
I definitely agree that, since we have so many new members, and, I've been there where you kind of jump in and there's people who've been part of the commission for a while and you're new and you're trying to go with the business as usual, but there are questions. So I definitely think having the training at the next meeting is definitely something that we should do to help us. And I know at the last month's meeting, it was Brendan who came up with the plan that we should have a plan. So I think that's a good starting point to make sure that everybody understands why we're here, you know, what our purpose is, and projects we can hopefully start working towards in the future.
I would find that most helpful. My only question is there a backlog of requests such as the ones we heard tonight that good?
No, as soon as we get them, there is a deadline on our website, so they all know when they're coming in and when they're due. I do know specifically of one that is turning in, so the deadline is next week for the next month's meeting. So I do know that there's one that is coming in. If someone gets it in a little late past the deadline, staff will kind of work around it and not make them wait months, you know, like a long period of time. So no, there is no backlog. All the items that were before us that we had people requesting were put on the agenda.
I think it's a great idea to have training. I've been on it for a while and I still greatly benefit from it. And I don't know if this is a good time or not, Mara, can I introduce, I mentioned to Mara that there was something I wanted to mention to the group, and it sort of goes to training to some degree, the way I see it in a way, but maybe more to Ann's point about our mission and our purpose. We serve at the direction of the city council. I mean, that's how I view this. If the city council has us as their helpers in developing the rules and the structure for historic preservation. And I also see that as also given all the things that city council has on their plate, kind of a list of priorities, what's important now. And I would personally like to hear from the city council what they see as important and where they want our direction to go as a council. I know Karen's on the meeting schedule, and I probably should have said something to you, Karen, before this call, but it's just something that's been on my mind, that, and this seems like a really good time, since we have so many new members, to have that conversation and get some direction from the city council about how do we fit into the council's plan.
And just to help Karen out, so just so you all know, Karen is your liaison, and she's supposed to sit, watch, observe, and bring information back. So as when she goes to the next council meeting, there is a time in the work session where each council member reports on the meetings that they've attended. So Karen comes back each time and she reports what you're working on and gives updates. So this would be her opportunity to know that you would like for her to report to the council that you would like more direction on how your role fits in with things that they're doing. And then she could bring that back at a future meeting, because she can't speak for the council without asking the other council members. So she'd be able to do that, ask that question. And I'm usually there at the work session meeting, so I can always help if she needs help in getting direction.
And I definitely have an opinion, but Mara's keeping me out of trouble, so.
I try.
I think that's a really good idea.
It would be helpful for me if there is a flow chart. It kind of shows the process and how it works through. Something like that would be, I taught school for 42 years. So, you know, something that would help me understand it. I've got lots of things to read, but it would streamline it for me if there was a flow chart that says it starts here and here's what happens.
So I know we have a flow chart that we created when we were doing the house demolitions. So we can definitely provide you all with that, with the training. In addition, the code is pretty straightforward. And there is a binder that at one point we had available, and we would, when we had new members, we'd kind of print up a whole new binder. But what we might do is kind of figure out what are the most important items, because at one point there were too many things in the binder that it was just too much to read. So definitely we can, in presenting and doing training next month, could create a PowerPoint presentation that we could kind of share via Zoom and show you some of the items. And then there is the conversation that we're going to need to start having. At what point are we comfortable meeting again in person? I'm not sure, you know, they're still going to have that discussion at this council level over the next few months. I know personally, my staff only all just got our second shots in the last week or two. So, you know, we are still in that cycle. So I do want to get us to a point where at some point we're either all going to have to be together, or we're going to have to be virtual for a while longer, only because there's still going to be difficulties with some of the technology. But I definitely hope to, one, work on potentially some binders for you all that are new, and have those dropped off at your houses. And then two, looking at a PowerPoint presentation to help explain a little bit more what you all, you know, what your code section says. What are the things that you, you know, in previous years, some of the things have been a focus. There was a new historic district along Marshall Avenue, where Maypop is, and that little strip that's right through there. There are different projects that the HPC has taken on at different points in time. And our focus the last, I think, 1.5 to 2 years has really been on code amendments, trying to clean up the code to address what you all were seeing, which was houses being demolished without going through any sort of historic review. And then looking at just in general houses that maybe are neglected and that are going to lead to demolition. So those, I think, have been the focus that you all have been looking at. But I think if we can have Karen report back to council and bring back information to you all, as well as provide some training. The other training we usually provide every couple of years is by the city attorney to explain to you all how sunshine law works. At a point you'll usually see when I send an email out to all of you, you're blind copied so that you can't accidentally break sunshine law and start having a conversation amongst yourselves via email. And then meetings have to be posted a certain time in advance. All of those things are some of the legalities that you have to work through. And he can also explain some other elements. So if I can get him to the next meeting, great. If we need to break up our training over 2 meetings, we might have to do that. We'll just see how that goes. I know at a certain point we did move the meeting to 6:30. We used to be, I think, at 7:30, and the meetings were getting really, really late. So we moved it to 6:30. Hopefully it gives people time to eat some dinner before we get started. And in most cases, it used to be get to City Hall. But ideally, we would kind of make sure that we have that time broken out so that we could do some significant time for training, but also for questions to ask additional information.
I think, so if we have the city attorney come and talk to us about, you know, what we can and can't talk about. I know you've mentioned in the past that if we wanted to form like a subcommittee, that's one way around that. Would the city attorney have more information about that as well, or?
Yeah, and I do too. It's not that it's a way around it. It's just a way that as long as you can form subcommittees and meet, you know, if you all happen to walk into the Webster Starbucks at the same time and then all sit down and start talking about something, then we have a problem. But if you happen to be standing, you know, on the side of the baseball field at the high school and you're chatting with someone, you know, again, there's not necessarily an issue with certain elements of it, but there's an issue when you are formally agreeing to meet and a group of you are all talking about an item that it's supposed to be a public item. And again, it's not that it happens very often. We try really hard to make sure that these meetings are available, that they're posted with proper notification, that people get the proper notification to meet and talk. And I know a number of people feel like maybe we aren't getting the word out as much because we are meeting via Zoom and things like that. But actually, I've gotten more participation at Plan Commission and City Council than I think that we have ever had. Because people can sit in their own homes. They don't have to leave and they can listen in and can participate. So there are some benefits to being via Zoom. And there are benefits to us being able to hold these types of things without violating sunshine law. But if you do have subcommittees, as long as you post a notification of where and when you're meeting, and it's posted at least 24 hours in advance, and you have some sort of an agenda to it, which we can help you do. You can have subcommittees, you can meet on other topics, you can have other people join those subcommittees. They don't have to be members that have been appointed to the commission.
So I have a question about, I guess, framing the historic value of some of the homes. I feel like looking at if someone historic lived there or something historic happened there, or if it's over 100 years old, like those are very concrete types of things. But I think like maintaining our diversity and our neighborhoods, like in North Webster, and maintaining, you know, the history that we have that's so rich and in danger right now is also a historic thing that we need to consider. And is that anywhere within what we do at all? Or is it only this house is X years old, this happened here? And I mean, because I feel like that's a huge miss. We are not representing our community appropriately then.
So the problem is it's a very fine line of the legalities of someone's property rights. So there are property rights that they have the ability to, if they want to tear down their house, you know, they have the right to tear down their house. And we have had some applicants where they've lived there for 20, 30 years and they want to stay there and they want to tear their own house down and they want to build on their own property. So you can't just, you've got to separate, you know, you can't separate those and say, well, this is we're going to stop this person because he happens to be a developer, and we're going to allow this person because they happen to have lived here for 30 years. So there are a lot of difficulties with some of those elements of it. It's very important for us to have very concrete items that we can back up if we are ever, you know, brought to court in regards to why we approved one versus why we didn't approve another. Now, what some of the other things that you're talking about, I think the city council is trying to address on a different level. So these pieces all kind of dovetail with one another. You have all these different elements to our various codes. We have our elements related to how big of a house can you build? We have your elements related to the code enforcement of what we can enforce someone to take care of or maintain for health and safety. There are still elements that we still can't get onto a property or can't do because of certain elements. So there's all these different piece parts that come together that we hope that we can use to try to maintain as much of the fabric of Webster Groves as we can. So it's going to be coming from different elements. You are going to have that one piece of the pie that relates to, are there ways you can save certain ones because of their historic nature?
We had
Laura, I'm going to have to leave. I've got to get a kid to a high school sport game. So thank you.
Go enjoy. And we do still have a quorum, so we're good to go.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye,
Good
Doug.
luck.
Bye. To that point, we had a property last year, like right before everything shut down. It was off Euclid. It was that little brick
Oh, yes.
front building that was purchased by a developer with the intent to tear it down and build a new structure. And I think in that one too, staff recommended to hold it because there was conflicting information on whether that was, I believe, like a first grocery store in that area.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's an example of, that was a property that was questionable because, you know, there could have been some kind of event that made it historic. It needed a lot more research. So that one we were able to hold the request for demolition. Unfortunately, that was right about the time that COVID happened, and
But here's a good thing. It has not been demolished yet.
okay,
So just to go back, there's at least one that you all approved for demolition on a completely different area, completely different property. I mean, this was one of the ones where you all, and I say you all, I don't even know how many of you were even on. But there was one that was on a particular street, more like central-ish Webster, sort of near Old Orchard. And we looked at it, and I mean, someone had abandoned it for multiple years. The water lines had been cut off, the gas had been cut off. There was, the photos had part of the bathroom collapsing. It was just a mess. And you all went, yep, there's nothing else we can do. It's got a really cool front structure, but there's really nothing else we can do. And it was over 100 years old. They didn't demolish it. It got renovated, and they've now sold it and someone's living in it. So there's still that opportunity. I think sometimes making them go through this step or this process is hopefully having a little bit of an effect. Not always, but sometimes.
I just wasn't sure if, you know, historically the fabric of Webster, as you describe it, I mean, maintaining that is really important. And like the affordable housing and stuff like that, cute little greenhouse, it was so cute tonight. And I was just like, oh, you know, if it could just have a little love, maybe it would. So I don't know.
Yeah, and it is a difficult one. It's hard to, there's not that many people out there who have the money or the time to give it that little bit of love. And the few that are out there, and again, it's not in all cases. It's probably a 50-50. So the Jim, who was on here with the greenhouse, he lives in Webster. He's an architect in Webster. He has lots of projects. He's served on the Architecture Review Board. You know, his kids are now moving to Webster. So and so again, it's a difficult, you know, you can't put that part into your determination because that part of it is something that we cannot legally uphold. So we're trying to uphold the other elements of it. But I agree with you. There's so much to the fabric of, and the concerns that we have over the number of smaller sized homes that are being demolished on smaller size lots to build something much, much larger. And we presented to the city council at the last meeting, and I can show it to you at the next time. But at the last council meeting, one of my staff pulled together a graph with all of the existing square footage of the homes in one color, and then the new home that went in its place in the other color, and it was shocking. It was absolutely shocking. And we were using that, and it's not just that, it's also when someone who's coming to flip a house. So for example, that little green house, you could still get someone who comes in who says, well, I'm going to save it, but I'm going to put a 2-story addition off of the back of this thing. And we've gotten those too, where they come in with this completely not sized architecturally, makes no sense off the back of the house. And in a lot of cases, it doesn't meet zoning either. And so we spend, months going back and forth with them before we'll let them even go to Architecture Review Board. So it's difficult. It's a desirable place to be because of that incredible architectural fabric and community. And yet at the same time, we're desirable. And so we have people coming in to, take advantage of that element that people want to live here.
Right. I mean, I feel like we're all here for the historic aspect, and a lot of people who want to come into Webster again, like Mara said, like that, but they want modern conveniences. And sometimes these houses in their mind are, just take it down and we'll build something new.
Really fast, right? What's frustrating for me is I'm a therapist, so people constantly remind me when I'm talking about like psychology stuff and sociology and different things that I'm working in a soft science, right? And this is essentially what we're talking about, right? We're looking at hard proven, like who lived here, did the exorcist occur here, was this a grocery store, all of these things. And Desha, what you're talking about, right, is that societal piece of that yellow house I can hit with a baseball. That'll be to the third house they build in this area. But I think they have like maybe a handful that they own and they're just kind of waiting. They're biding their time. But it's right. It's that whole, like, we're talking about a soft science and we can't necessarily bring soft science into court and say you're pricing people out and creating. Yeah, sorry.
Nope, it's a difficult one.
It just as like as a person speaking since Karen's ear is there, if there's any way to like shove that thing through city council to be like, yeah, these houses can't be 5,000 square feet. They've got to be 1,200 or 2,400. I don't know if that was allowed to say. If it wasn't, strike it from the record. I apologize.
Well, and what I encourage you to do too is please attend the city council meetings and speak up. There's comments, because unfortunately you hear a lot from the people that are against anything as opposed to the people that are for something or these types of things. I mean, you get all kind of people saying we're trying to tell them what to do and blah, 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 but we don't get many more, as many to come up and say, what can we do to preserve some of this? We get more of the market. It's a matter what the market will bear, and how can you keep somebody from coming in and making money and blah, 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 but I encourage you to please speak up with comments where we can at city council, because to Mara's point, right now on Zoom, we probably have more people, more of a captive audience than we've experienced, in a regular environment, because people can join from home and sit and watch and listen. So I just encourage you to please add your comments.
And I will be forwarding probably a link and some other information. I can send you a copy of the PowerPoint that I presented at council, if it helps, and send that on. I will put that on my to-do list. But if you're all in agreement, what I can do is prepare for the next meeting that we will focus on. We'll hold off on these other items. We can keep them still on old business, but we'll focus on training for the next meeting. And then we can just postpone the other two items, or maybe I'll even postpone again, because we won't have time to address them and do training also. And then I believe we'll have one house demolition, but again, those should be pretty straightforward from a certain standpoint. And I think that'd be it.
Does anybody have any other questions or comments for this meeting? Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn. I was trying to let Steve do it.
I wanted to see one of the new guys sit there and stare at me until they said something. So thank you for stepping in.
Does someone want a second?
And
I'll second.
okay.
good. Thank you, everyone. I'll make sure to help Karen at the next council meeting if she has any need to ask the other council members about direction to bring it back to the next meeting. Everyone enjoy the beautiful weather. I think we're gonna have some really nice weather the next couple weeks.
And then hopefully by our next meeting, we'll have a full commission, right?
Ideally, yes, I believe there were, once they appoint one other person to, Karen, is it Parks and Rec or Green Space?
There's Parks and Rec,
Mhm.
Parks and Rec.
Yeah,
Yeah, Parks and,
and then
mhm.
I think you have 3 people or 4 people who have all applied for one spot. And then of those people, 1 or 2 of them had also said, sure,
HP Rec. Mhm.
HPC sounds good too.
Mhm.
So I would think that you're gonna get your final person before the next meeting. So thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.